Do you think that there are existing, well, maybe that's not the way to say it. Since we're talking about infinitesimal universes and everything, if we are not by chance and by probability the most advanced civilization that exists, and it's fair to say we probably aren't, but the other one could be trillions of universes away, do you think that there is the potential that a civilization has figured out from some other galaxy how to become a third-tier civilization and potentially visit us?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder what happens on the other side of the Milky Way galaxy. Is there a young scientist there on the other side of the Milky Way writing down the exact same equations that I'm writing down, but in a different language? And I realize that if this is a theory of everything, it's probably unique. In which case, throughout the galaxy, many, many civilizations will come across this. And of what use is this equation? This equation takes us beyond Einstein. Einstein's theory is ambivalent on the question of whether or not wormholes can actually exist, whether or not you can build a time machine, whether or not you can zip across the galaxy instantly. Einstein's equations do not have a definitive yes or no on that question. String theory would. In which case, if wormholes are really possible, and they are a type 3 civilization, they would be able to manipulate the Planck energy. The Planck energy is the energy at which space and time become unstable. Now, many people say, well, doesn't that violate the laws of physics? Isn't it nonsense? But at a certain point, the known laws of physics begin to break down. And they break down at the Planck energy, 10 to the 19 billion electron volts. That is a quadrillion times more powerful than our most powerful atom smasher based in Geneva, Switzerland. That is the Planck energy. The Planck energy is the energy at which space becomes unstable. Bubbles begin to form in this space, and these bubbles are gateways, wormholes to other universes. And so we think that a civilization out there, smart enough, advanced enough, would eventually use these things perhaps to zip around the Milky Way galaxy. In principle, you could go faster than the speed of light by zipping through a wormhole.
That makes me question UFOs, though, when you say that. And the reason is UFOs are supposedly these ships that we see that come into our galaxy. There's been alleged crashes and things like that that exist in a way that we assume they have much more power than, say, our rockets or planes, obviously, and things like that. But we can see them. They obviously move to where the human eye has become aware of them if they have, in fact, been sighted, which tells me that that would be almost, in a way, moving microscopically slow for a tier 3 civilization that has figured out, you know, the relationship with time and light and stuff like that. Why would we ever see anything? Why would there be something like a drone or a Tic Tac or a full-blown UFO ship that comes in if it's coming from a civilization that would almost seem to have something like that considered to be completely in the rear view?
Well, any civilization that advanced that can use wormholes to zip across the Milky Way galaxy would eventually want to stop and look around and see what's out there. And that's when they would have to have drones that would be then sent to explore these different planets. Now, these drones could be part organic, part mechanical, but they themselves do not need a starship to land on the Earth. They would simply shoot drones which would then land on the planet Earth. So when we finally meet them, they could be robotic, they could be part biological, any possibility. But the reason why they're able to reach us to begin with is because they went through a wormhole. That is the only way that we know of to go faster than the speed of light.
But if they, so you're using a term like drone, though, which I guess is just something we've crafted as a term to refer to these flying objects that we put in the sky. But who's to say that they even, like, I don't understand why they would have a drone, in air quotes there, that could move slow enough that would allow them to be seen. And maybe this is another thing I do throw out there as someone who does believe in the phenomenon and what's been going on. But, like, you know, just playing devil's advocate, maybe they look at it and they're like, they can simulate these outcomes ahead of time. Maybe we're this rich experiment for them just to see how we respond to certain impeti or impetuses, whatever it is, and things like that, in the sense that, okay, I'm an alien civilization, I'm exploring Earth, let's let them see one. Let's see how they respond to that. Let's see how the human mind freaks out to that, or denies it, or accepts it, or whatever. Do you think that maybe that is the reason why we're able to, quote unquote, see these things?
I think it's simpler than that. I think that as they explore outer space, they send drones out there. And if you saw the movie 2001, I think gives you a pretty accurate portrayal of how it would actually happen. That they would put a probe on the moon. Why the moon? Because the moon has no friction, no erosion. Things are stable for billions of years. And it's a listening post. A listening post where they can scan the solar system to see what life forms can exist. And then once in a while, they would land on the planet to, have close-up views of what's happening there. And the other thing about the movie 2001 is that these drones self-replicate. Toward the end of the movie, you saw thousands of these drones surrounding Jupiter. That's important because how do you colonize the universe? If you put a drone on the moon and makes copies of itself, these are called von Neumann probes. Von Neumann probes are probes that make copies of themselves and shoot out to the next generation of planets. They then colonize those planets and shoot out once again. So with one probe, you have two. With two probes, you have 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128 probes until you have a sphere of billions of probes expanding near the speed of light, or perhaps even superluminal velocities, colonizing the galaxy. That is the most mathematically efficient way to explore the universe. Forget the Enterprise in Star Trek. The Enterprise goes from hopping from planet to planet to planet. That is the most inefficient way to explore the galaxy. The most efficient way to explore the galaxy was von Neumann probes that land on moons, make copies of themselves, they shoot out. And where have you seen that before? That's a virus. That's exactly what viruses do. Viruses land on a cell, hijack the machinery, create copies of themselves that shoot out, they make more copies of themselves. That's the most mathematically efficient way to colonize the Milky Way galaxy. And that's what an advanced civilization would do, because you only have to make the first probe. Once you make the first probe, like a virus, it just self-replicates all by itself. Okay? That is the most efficient way to conquer the galaxy.
And why haven't they looked at it as a foreign object in this way? Why haven't they looked to destroy us that we know of, overtly?
Well, if you're going down a country road and you see a squirrel, do you go down to the squirrel and say, I'm gonna torture you, I'm gonna skin you, I'm gonna put you on a roaster at home? Or you simply try to talk to it. And after a while, you get kind of bored because the squirrel doesn't talk back to you, and you just simply keep on going. So I would imagine that to them, we're nothing but forest animals, squirrels, mice, rabbits. And they initially want to make contact with us, but eventually they get bored because what do we have to offer them? Rap music? I mean, what are we going to use to entice these aliens to give us their advanced technology? No. The danger is that we could be in their way. That's the real danger. Because if we're in their way, what do we do when animals are in our way? We remove them.
Right.
We colonize it. We put a shopping mall. Put a shopping mall where the forest used to be. That is a real danger. Because they may not want to conquer us, because what do we have to offer? Gold? Silver? No, we have nothing to offer them. Okay? So they would pretty much leave us alone. If they wanted gold or minerals and stuff like that, they could go to Mars, which is uninhabited, we think, and has plenty of minerals. And so if they need materials, there are other planets to plunder than Earth. So I think for the most part, they would consider us a curiosity, analyze us with drones, and leave us alone. And that's exactly what we see now.
Is there a physical explanation or a physics-related explanation to determine if it's possible that they could have figured out invisibility?
Well, we will have invisibility in the coming decades.
Please do tell. This is news to me.
Yeah, these are called metamaterials.
Okay.
And metamaterials allow you to have an index of refraction, which governs the bending of light, and have negative index of refraction. And they already exist for microwaves, not visible, but for microwave frequencies, we can make objects disappear. In fact, they're videotaped. Google it, metamaterials, and you'll see videotapes of objects disappearing under microwaves. Now, of course, microwaves is not visible frequency. That's what we want. We want invisibility in the frequency, in the visible frequency range. But for metamaterials, you can actually get objects to disappear under microwave radiation. The next jump that the military wants to do, of course, is to use metamaterials in the optical frequency range. And we can't do that yet. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. I'm trying to pull this up on Google right now. I don't see any. It's behind you on the screen there. But I don't know if I see any videos.
Yeah, they're videotapes showing waves of microwaves hitting metamaterials, bending in the wrong direction, okay, with a negative index of refraction, and it becomes invisible to microwaves.
I do have a video now. I'll put that in the corner of the screen for people. It's from the Financial Times. It looks like they have a simulation of that. So the answer for us is even yes, somewhat soon. And so the answer for other civilizations is most certainly yes if they're more advanced. So hypothetically speaking, they could be here right now walking among us.
That's right. And how would we even know that they exist? If they're avatars, avatars would be designed to look just like us. If they're that advanced, they can obviously create germ cells to then grow copies of ourselves in their laboratory. And so we could even walk among them and not even know that we're being visited by aliens from outer space. I mean, that's how we would do it.
Yeah.
If we were to go into outer space and meet a civilization that's kind of paranoid and still primitive and would go to war over the idea that there are foreign aliens from outer space on their planet, what would you do? You would probably clone yourself or create an avatar to walk among us, and you'd never know the difference. And by the way, these flying saucers, what do they have that is astounding from our point of view? We have videotapes of them. We can analyze them frame by frame now. And if these videotapes are true, it means they can go up to Mach 20, 20 times the speed of sound. And Mach 5 is very easy for them. They could go faster than many of our missiles, except, of course, some of our drones can, in fact, go to Mach 20. And they can also go underwater. Our drones can't do that. Our drones cannot fly in the air and then all of a sudden go underwater.
It sounds like you're talking, I just want to make sure I'm following the right one. It sounds like specifically you're talking about like what David Fravor saw from the Nimitz and everything with the Tic Tac.
That's one of the several ones that were seen by the United States Navy off the coast of California. And it shows that if they really are traveling at Mach 20, and if they can zigzag, like we see in the videos, it means that they can withstand G-forces of several hundred times the force of gravity, which would crush the bones of most organisms on the planet Earth. And there they are, executing these motions, flying underwater, flying in the air, going up to Mach 20, and we now have videotapes. It's just not somebody saying, Martha, Martha, look, I see something in outer space now. No, we're looking at frame by frame, analyzing the videotapes. Now, the videotapes can also lie, so we have to be careful. There's something called the parallax effect, where if you don't know the distance to an object that slowly moves across the video screen could be moving very, very fast from a large distance. So parallax can fool you. So we have to make sure that we know the distance between the eye and the object we are looking at.
Is there any reason to believe that an organization like DARPA, or in coordination with other intelligence agencies like the CIA, NSA, whatever, could be in possession, or other countries and their organizations could be in possession of technology like this that we can't comprehend? I mean, I had James Fox in here for a couple episodes. He's a brilliant UFOologist who has made incredible documentaries. It almost seems like, and essentially when he was bringing up like the Nimitz example for that one with the Tic Tac, and we're watching the video on the radar detector, and it's clearly doing things that we can't. my thought did go to like, well, we know they hold a lot of this technology back before they give it to us. That's demonstrated over time. You can even look at Google. They've announced at least or said publicly that they had their first somewhat self-driving car in 2006, and we still don't even have them on the road. So I start to think like, well, that's a company. What about like the government and what they could have? Is there something that you could look to? Because I would imagine you're somebody who talks to, I mean, you got to be somebody who talks to some of the most talented minds in the world all the time. Is there some way to be able to say, yeah, they could have something working on top secret type endeavors that does these physical things that you just pointed out?
Well, I get emails from people saying that they've seen flying saucers. So I have a word of advice. The next time you encounter a flying saucer and are kidnapped, for God's sake, steal something. I don't care whether it's an alien pen, an alien paperweight. Steal something. Because then afterwards you have bragging rights. And afterwards, you can say, aha, I have proof, tangible evidence. Because all we have is hearsay and a few videotapes. Hearsay, well, who knows if hearsay is correct? Maybe you were drunk that day. Who knows? Videotapes, yeah, but you got to worry about parallax effects. Because, of course, you're looking at a two-dimensional compressed screen. You cannot judge distances very well using videotapes. So you have to be careful with that. But hard, concrete evidence, that could nail it to the wall. An alien chip, an alien piece of hardware, an alien metallurgy, that would just settle the debate. We wouldn't be here talking about it if somebody would simply steal one of the things that they see in the flying saucer when they're kidnapped.
But what if they simulate that ahead of time? Because if they want, like my thought is if the aliens are seen, it is probably some sort of reverse psychology where they want to be seen. Because, I mean, we're sitting here talking about invisibility a few minutes ago, like we're going to be able to do it. Of course, we know then that these advanced civilizations, tier 3 type civilizations, could do whatever the hell they want. So if they're seen, it's like they're fucking with us a little bit. And they're like, aha, look at us. Yeah, you got us. And I don't know why, if it's a part of an experiment on their end to be like, ooh, let's see how they react, like I was talking about a little bit ago. Perhaps part of that calculation is, well, we're going to do it in a way in which we make sure that the physical evidence is never seen. Meaning there is no ability to steal something when someone's in the moment being abducted by an alien or something like that.
Well, let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
And first of all, ask, what can the aliens do? What do they look like? What are their capabilities and stuff like that, right? Take a look at evolution of life on the Earth. How come we came out the way we did? We have 3 attributes that we think is common to all intelligent life in the universe. First, some kind of hand, some kind of manipulating the environment, claw, some kind of tentacle, a way to manipulate the environment. That's number 1, okay? Number 2 is eyesight, some way to scan the environment and understand distance so that you can then hunt and whatever. Stereo vision, the vision of a hunter. We have stereo vision. Rabbits do not. That's why rabbits have to worry about the fox, because the fox does have stereo vision. The rabbit just has to run. The fox has stealth, can hide, can ambush, because it has stereo vision. We have stereo vision. We're hunters. We are not like rabbits with eyes to the side of our face, okay? And third, language, because you want to make sure that the next generation has benefit of the lessons that you learned in your generation. So you want to have a language of some sort to hand down information. These 3 things. Now ask yourself a simple question. How many animals on Earth have all 3?
Just us.
We're the only ones. Now, apes come close. But their language is rather primitive. They have maybe a vocabulary of maybe 50 words tops, okay? And they have a grappling instrument, but the opposable thumb is rather crude. It's not well developed, the hand of a ape or a monkey. And so you begin to realize that we're kind of rare on the planet Earth. So in outer space, we expect aliens to have some kind of claw, tentacle, manipulating device, some kind of stereo vision of some sort to scan the environment, and some way to hand down information from generation to generation. Other than that, anything goes. Now, let's say they land on the Earth. What are they going to do on the Earth? Well, let's reverse it. If you were the aliens now and you landed on the Earth and you saw a bunch of squirrels, right? What are you going to do? Are you going to give the squirrels the advantage of nuclear energy, the advantage of advanced mathematics, the advantage of rocketry and stuff like that, right?
But they might think that's cute. They
Yeah.
might think that's nothing.
Yeah.
They probably do.
So if they give us a little piece of their technology, right, like a candy bar of some sort, oh, these squirrels have never tasted candy bars before, right? If they have an experience with advanced technology, it's a game. It's nothing but they're playing with us.
Yes.
Right? So I think for the most part, they'll leave us alone. Because what do we have to offer? Gold? No, gold is useless to them. They
Right.
can manufacture, they can plunder as many planets as they want. So what do we have that they would want? There's nothing. We're a curiosity to them. They would interact with us because they're curious about us. They want to know the limits of what we can do. But for the most part, they'll leave us alone. Except, of course, to be seen. And they would, of course, not want to be seen by tourists taking pictures and interfering with their work. So they would want to have bases a little bit away from civilization because they don't want to be bothered. And maybe that's the reason why they have underwater sightings. Maybe their base is underwater. Who knows?
That starts to get real weird if you start thinking about that. I mean, my God. I mean, sometimes when I look at people in culture, I say this all the time, but it could be good or bad, but I'll be like, maybe that person's an alien. Maybe you're an alien. Maybe there's something different about you, and that's why you know all these things, and you're coming here in human form to teach it all to us. Like, I mean, I'd be down with that. I think that's pretty cool, right? Yeah, not bad. Gee, I don't have your mic on. Sorry, Gio. I'll turn it on a little bit. But as far as like, figuring out where we stand right now with the evidence itself and how real it is very interesting to me that this seems to be something that you hadn't discussed a ton until recent years. So what really made you change your mind besides maybe seeing like the Nimitz video? I guess that was from like 2005, but they didn't release it till 2017. Was that the main catalyst, or are you thinking about something deeper about the meaning here?
Well, I'm a physicist, and we go where the data goes. And if the data goes in the direction of hearsay and people saying they saw something and so on and so forth, yeah, that goes to a certain point. Maybe they're correct, but maybe they're incorrect too, right? So that's where we were up to now. The data has been inconclusive. Now we have tons of videotapes coming out of the military. Most of them, of course, still with weather balloons and atmospheric phenomenon, but a handful of them that seem to defy most explanations. And so I think we have to be open to the idea that they could be from outer space. We have to be open to that idea. That is an option that's on the table.
Of the things that you have seen in looking at this, what percentage confident are you that they're from outer space?
Well, I think it's too early to say because there's no smoking gun yet. That's what we want. Like I said, an alien ship, an alien piece of hardware, an alien Coke bottle. There's a Harvard astronomer who says that maybe the aliens left Coke bottles behind. We think that they're going to leave advanced chips and technology behind, but what happens if they leave garbage behind? That's good enough. A piece of alien garbage will be enough to clinch it, right? So far, we see no evidence of advanced technology or byproducts of advanced technology like garbage coming from these alien sightings. Like, for example, it's possible to show hieroglyphics in ancient aliens of people with headdresses that look like helmets, okay? Well, that's tantalizing, but it's not the smoking gun, okay? We want something that is testable, measurable, falsifiable. That's the bottom line. Testable, measurable, falsifiable. We don't have that yet. We're getting close, which I think is a good sign because now the military has given us videotapes that we can analyze frame by frame to see whether or not they adhere to our known laws of physics.
And you've also, I think, said on the record at some point that the Pentagon has hundreds of hours of tapes of UFOs. Have you personally seen any of those?
No, they're classified. But, for example, it's been known that in one sighting, they saw flying saucers in the sky, and this went on for days. For days, they saw these things flying in the sky. And so that's why I'm saying that there's lots of videotapes that we have yet to see. And we're just waiting and seeing as more and more tapes get declassified.
Yeah, I don't know if there's some sort of rhyme or reason to it, but I do think about like the limited hangout idea of all this. Like suddenly you saw this go mainstream in 2017 with the bombshell report in the New York Times, and now over the past few years it's gained more traction, more people are talking about it. But I kind of wonder if the people who are working on this at the government and then the people they bring in from the outside to effectively become the government to work with them are even in contact with other governments maybe around the world, and they're at some level, at some governmental level, whether it's just us or multiple governments in tandem. I kind of wonder if these UFO revelations that we're hearing are more to distract from a way bigger deal. Perhaps there is data. I'll throw a random one out there. I have no evidence for it, but I'm just going to say it, like as far as like a possibility. Let's say that they knew for a fact that aliens are walking among us, quite literally. They are appearing as people, but they're not people.
They could be avatars, for example. Avatars would walk among us.
And we wouldn't know that they're not a real person.
That was the basis of the movie, if you saw it. I mean, they're just like the aliens. And they were introduced because the aliens would freak out if, of course, aliens from outer space landed on them. So they create avatars that look just like the native avatars.
But would that, if a doctor opened up the body of an avatar?
It would be identical, because you could have a sperm and egg generate a baby that would grow up, and of course you would train them to become avatars that are in the service of humans. But they would be genetically identical to the people on the home planet, and they would be trained to walk among us. So this is a technology that even we could do. We could use sperm and egg to generate a new generation of aliens that we would observe with our avatars. We could do this today. And therefore, the aliens from outer space, if they land on the Earth, they certainly would have the option of creating beings just like us, genetically just like us, except, of course, their memory circuits are those from an alien civilization. Their allegiance is to the aliens.
So again, I asked then, because I didn't finish making the point here to get your thoughts, but like, is this revelation, do you think there is a possibility at least that these revelations are cover for way bigger revelations, like something like that?
Possible, but you have to be more specific. I'm a scientist. We go where the data goes. No matter if the data seems to go in an outrageous direction, we have to go that way, because that's where the data is going. You know, Carl Sagan, the astronomer, was a guy that was very level-headed about a lot of things, did not believe in a lot of nonsense. But there's a chapter in his book where he talked about ancient aliens, that if an alien civilization were to land on the Earth while we were still in a very primitive tribal stage, how would we react to them? We would think they're messengers from the gods. Okay? And he was a reputable astronomer saying that, yes, maybe there's a record, but it's not decidable. It's not the smoking gun. It's just a possibility.
And how would we know to recognize it too? Like, we think that's easy in the internet age, but maybe it's not. I mean, like you had the Aztec civilization where the conquistadors came in. Was that Cortes? I think that was Cortes.
Yeah.
And they were able to, the conquistadors ransacked the Aztecs because the Aztecs thought that Cortes was like a god. Like, they couldn't recognize it. Now, this is new world at the time. There's no internet, there's no mass communication and things like that. But point being, human nature does reflect itself in new ways as things move forward. They didn't recognize what Cortes was, so how maybe we might look at other things that could be alien, but they're not. They're our own kind here. That's kind of a convoluted way of putting it, but you see what I'm saying.
Well, there is something called the METI Project, which I don't think is a good idea. The METI Project, well, first of all, the SETI Project is to simply listen in and eavesdrop on alien conversations in outer space. Reputable physicists are working on the SETI Project. The METI Project is to actively reach out to the aliens and say, we are here. This is our coordinates. This is our level of technology. Come visit us. I think that's a very bad idea. Because look at what happened when Cortes met the Aztecs. Cortes had the horse. Aztecs did not have a horse. Cortes had gunpowder. The Aztecs did not have gunpowder. Cortes had steel weapons. The Aztecs did not have steel weapons. Cortes had a written language. The Aztecs had a pictorial language, not a written language. And of course, Cortes and his men eventually would bring smallpox. So it was an uneven match. The Aztecs were basically Stone Age, while here we have Cortes coming in with steel, horses, gunpowder, navigation devices. It was no match. And just in a few months, much of the Aztec civilization was destroyed. Okay. Now, personally, I think that the aliens in outer space are probably peaceful. They've had millions of years to work out their sectarian racial differences. So I think for the most part, they would explore outer space out of curiosity and for energy resources. But they would pretty much leave us alone. I mean, that's my personal point of view, that they're probably out there because the universe is so big. I mean, we have 100 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and we now know on average how many stars have planets going around them. On average, every single star has a planet going around it, on average. So we know that the galaxy is teeming with planets, and we think that water is going to be common throughout some of these planets, in which case life could be formed. In fact, even within our solar system, Mars does not look like a very good possibility for life, but now we're looking at Europa and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, like Enceladus. Life could exist because oceans there have more water than on the Earth. I repeat, there's more water in the moons of Jupiter than on the planet Earth. So in other words, and since there's so many Jupiters and so many satellites going around Jupiter, it could be that life in the galaxy could be aquatic. Aquatic life could be the dominant life form in the universe.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to then revise our thinking just within our own backyard. We see no life on Mars, but we see the potential for life on Europa, Enceladus, the other Jovian moons, for example, and the Saturnian moons.
It's making me think, too, when you bring up the presence of so much water on these different planets. You've said before, I think this was in your book, you talked about, in Quantum Supremacy, about how in the future we're going to power the world using water, using hydrogen. So hypothetically, if we're looking at, now Jupiter's not a good example because that's within our galaxy, like we understand what that is. But if you're looking at other planets, couldn't they be way farther ahead because they have figured out completely how to do everything just with the presence of water alone? Forget even the star?
Well, in terms of time, it only took us a few hundred years to go from a feudal age into the modern technological age. Just a few hundred years.
Right.
So I think in outer space, the aliens, if they follow the same trajectory, would already be reaching out to technologies that use electronics, for example. Now, there is a disadvantage being aquatic, and that is electricity short circuits. Electricity short circuits underwater. And so the alien civilizations that exist on aquatic environments, like Europa, a moon of Jupiter, for example, would have to be careful that when they start to experiment with electricity, it would have to be over the ice rather than under the ice, because their devices would short circuit as a consequence. But that's just a temporary impediment. If they're advanced, they'll eventually learn how to go above the ice and create electronics.
And then on our end, though, we're also looking, like, we've spent so many years now pounding the table with solar energy. Like, I would have thought as a non-scientist that, like, oh, that would be the next frontier. But you seem to think that we'll figure that out and move it faster. Maybe you can explain that, but that we're going to skip and use mostly water.
Well, fusion power uses hydrogen, and the most plentiful source of hydrogen is in the oceans. And so the fuel for fusion plants could be in the oceans. And we're going to have fusion power in the coming decades. By mid-century, fusion plants should be rather commonplace. And of course, the energy there is limitless. Fusion plants do not melt down, unlike uranium plants, which do melt down. They create no nuclear waste, or hardly any nuclear waste at all. And if there's an accident, they simply shut off. So we're talking about the ideal source of energy. That's the energy source of Mother Nature. Mother Nature does not use uranium. Uranium is messy, creates meltdowns, contaminates the area around you. Nature doesn't use uranium. Nature uses fusion power, which is clean, no meltdowns, tremendous amounts of energy, and seawater is the basic ingredient. So I think that when we meet aliens from outer space, they'll probably already be in the fusion age.
Well, what about batteries here too? Because in order to do all the stuff that we've done to this point since the last industrial revolution and building out towards what is going to be the quantum revolution, I guess, like it seems to me that we are so limited. Like my phone, if it's on for 14 hours, is dead, right? We've had iPhones now for a while, and yet the batteries have gotten better, but they still operate. I'm going to get above my pay grade here, but they still operate on lithium mostly, and there's not some sort of like God particle or something that can allow them to be self-sustaining and use solar energy or something like that. Like as we move from a type 0 to a type 1 civilization, as you think we're doing, and we're in the last stretches of that, so to speak, over these next 100 years, how much do you think we're going to how soon do you think we're going to figure out battery power and not have things be so, say, short-circuited?
Well, first of all, many people in the 50s talked about the solar age, that in the coming decades, everything will be solar, clean, infinite, so on and so forth. It never arrived. It never came. Why? Because the weak link was not solar. The weak link was the battery. Batteries do not obey Moore's law. Moore's law is what drives the electronic revolution. We assume that everything obeys Moore's law. The battery is a chemical reaction, and we found it by trial and error. And that's where quantum computers can come in. Instead of trying different substances one by one in a petri dish, trying to get energy out of a dish, right? Why not use quantum computers to simulate hundreds, thousands of chemicals to see which ones can create a super battery? And so the automobile industry is very interested in this. They're investing money in quantum computers to find out if there's a magic substance besides lithium that can generate energy and drive the economy of the future. So quantum computers could be the missing link, giving us the ability to do chemistry in the memory of a computer. Think about that. You can perform billions of experiments just with a push of a button, rather than bankrupting yourself, creating different chemicals and testing them each one out to see whether or not they have the same electrolytic properties as lithium. So I think that's where quantum computers already are being used to try to look for the super battery.
Well, I should have asked this earlier then. I don't know why I'm just thinking of this, but couldn't quantum computing basically simulate the beginning of time and potentially the existence of other civilizations?
Right. In my book, I realized that quantum computers, because they're so powerful, can simulate the Big Bang and can give us details of why the universe banged this way rather than banging the other way. And so the quantum computers are powerful enough, we think, to answer many of the questions that cosmologists grapple with. Why did the universe bang in this way rather than banging in another way? And so, yeah, that's an application of quantum computers. Quantum computers are also being used in fusion plants. Fusion plants are very delicate because you have to squeeze hydrogen gas to enormous temperatures, and sometimes you get instabilities. Quantum computers can allow you to anticipate these instabilities. And so quantum computers may be a way to make sure that fusion plants operate correctly. So yet that's another example of the power of of quantum computers, which are more powerful than digital supercomputers.
Yeah, because it's the thing I keep coming back to that you seem to be making clear is their ability to simulate everything allows us to have the answers before we try them, which we've even seen some of the power of simulation with this age, pre-quantum. So I can only imagine how powerful it would be with that. But does that mean that there's things that we're fighting over as a type 0 civilization right now, late stage type 0, that are actually pointless because they're going to be solved? I mean, in your book, you talk about the whole global warming and how we can use quantum to correct the climate and everything. And yet right now, that's such a difficult conversation publicly because either the two loudest people are the people who think the planet is ending tomorrow or the people who think no climate change exists, both of whom I think are wrong. But like, is quantum just going to come in and basically be like, all right, we don't care what you've been saying. Like, here's how you do it. This is what you do. Here's how to control the weather. Boom, we're done.
Well, quantum computers can impact on global warming in several ways. First of all, they could make possible fusion plants. And fusion plants immediately have the potential of replacing oil and coal, and therefore solving much of the global warming problem right there in its tracks. That's one option, okay? The option probably by mid-century. The other option, though, is to create super batteries so that solar power is competitive, economically competitive with oil and coal. That's another possibility. The third possibility is that quantum computers are so powerful they can accurately simulate the atmosphere in a way that digital computers cannot. Digital computers take the Earth, chop up the Earth in cubes. In cubes, each cube is many miles long, simulate the atmosphere in a cube, and then put all these cubes together. That's how atmospheric computer programming is done. We chop up the atmosphere in cubes, we calculate the weather in each cube, marry them with all the other cubes around the Earth, and that's how weather prediction is done. However, each cube is many, many miles across because our supercomputers are not powerful enough to do what Mother Nature does. Mother Nature has cubes. These cubes are just 1 atom across, not hundreds of miles across. And so quantum computers can give you much more accurate simulation of the weather than digital computers. And that's yet another way that quantum computers can impact on global warming. So we know what we're talking about. We can make more accurate predictions of the future weather.
How do you regulate this? If this comes 10 years from now and we have quantum power and the government has it, corporations have it, maybe some individuals have it, how do you decide? I mean, don't even just think just America or like an individual country. Like as a world, how do you be like, all right, China, you're not changing the weather today. It's Tuesday. It's our day. Like, how does this order work? What does it look like?
Well, it'll have to be done one at a time. Okay. Take a look, for example, chatbots. Chatbots are causing a lot of sensation because many people have never seen them before. They simply seem to simulate human speech. They seem to be talking just like a human talks. But of course, that's the reason why, is because they cobble together passages from humans. And therefore, of course, they sound human because that's what it's based upon, right? And then the question is, who regulates that? Nobody. We're going to have fact checkers. We're going to have checks on this. In other words, constitutionally, you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. There are limits to free speech. Yes, you can go outside and denounce the president. Yes, the Constitution guarantees that. But if you yell fire in a crowded theater and people die as a consequence, that's where free speech ends. And so now we're at the point where chatbots can yell fire in a crowded theater. They can make up things. If teenagers can make up all sorts of garbage, then some of that stuff can be incorporated in a chatbot program because the chatbots do not know right from wrong. Okay, so that's the simplest application of the chaos that chatbots can create, and how quantum computers can help to minimize the chaos that chatbots will create, because chatbots simply plagiarize everybody, including teenagers who write all sorts of nonsense on the web.
But still, like that's where it's, in this case, policing the quality of an AI, so to speak. But we still have a human problem, because human beings are the ones whose fingers are going to be on the other end of this. And so, like, even with AI, because honestly, like, quantum just seems to make, to me, in my mind, it makes AI just seem like a wave that exists from it. It's not, like, AI is not the main thing. Like, quantum's actually the thing I should be more worried about. And I like to have an optimistic view on things. I think the powers that we're laying out that this can have are incredible. But, like, still, I'm living in a world right now where I have some of the most prominent physicists in the world currently signing their name to a document that says, let's pause AI for 6 months because GPT came out. And now you're talking about a world maybe 10 years from now where we have this computational power in all these individual hands. Again, I go back to that question, like, how do you... you talk about like an exponential, having to have an exponential understanding of human behavior. How the hell can we stop some sort of catastrophe where, you know, an interested party, say a country, gets possession of something and uses it for not good? And that could be us too, by the way. And I'm not saying that's somewhere else.
Well, that's been the way of warfare. We saw that dramatically during World War II, where the Nazis systematically tried to use the mass media to promote its goals and its ideology and its thinking and stuff like that. So we know it does exist. And the superpowers today will do that. They have divisions which create all sorts of nonsense to try to confuse the picture and try to muddle the waters of a neighboring country that already exists. The point is that chatbots just make it worse. It already exists. It's already there. Disinformation. Whole divisions of governments are designed to create disinformation, right? The question is, how do you regulate it? And I think it's going to be done piece by piece. We live in a democracy, a lot of different competing interests, a lot of noise out there. But hey, it works. Democracy works. And so we're going to have to wait for different kinds of chaos to happen. And then democracies will democratically discuss it point by point and come to some kind of resolution that everyone agrees with. In other words, when you yell fire in a crowded theater, where do you draw the line? How many people have to be affected? How big is the theater? How much do you influence people by yelling fire? There's a lot of fine tuning that goes involved, but that's how the way democracy is. Democracy comes out with general principles, and the fine tuning is done by vigorous debate among people.
But in the future, say fast forward as a type 1 civilization, does this not even matter anymore? Because you have things like democracy or insert blank here, terminology here, thing we fight over here. And it sounds like you were describing a world in your book where that won't matter because technology will be so smart and we will be so ingrained with its intelligence that we will accept its answer as how it actually is because it's quote unquote inarguable. I might be stretching that there, but...
Well, I think the power of democracy is that people talk back and debate things and chew things to death. But, as Winston Churchill said, democracy is worse than every system that's ever been tried except for one. So, in other words, the point is that it's messy. The lines have not been drawn. We're simply doing it for the first time. But that's the way it was during World War II, okay, when we saw what propaganda would do for the first time. We've never seen propaganda used on that kind of scale before, right? And, laws were passed as a consequence, and that's what's going to have to be done. People will have to discuss it, laws will have to be passed, and it's going to be messy. But that's what democracy is, messy.
Yeah. And we're also talking about a growing population while all this is going on. And so there's all kinds of, that's another thing people debate all the time, like, oh, are we too populated and everything? But quantum is now this technology that could potentially lead to, as you were laying out earlier already, simulating some form of immortality because it's fixing some of those mistakes that happen within DNA. So if over the next 100 years we start figuring out how to live forever, quote unquote, which is a wild thing to think about, but doesn't that mean that we need to hurry up to become a type 2 civilization so that we can get people to other planets to be able to continue to survive so we don't overpopulate here?
Well, I think the driving force to become a type 1, type 2 civilization to explore the galaxy is the fact that the dinosaurs did not have a space program. And look what happened to them. They didn't know what hit them.
Yeah.
They got wiped out, right? And there are asteroids out there which can create a tremendous amount of damage. We don't monitor asteroids that are smaller than a football field, for example. Anything smaller than a football field goes right by our notice. And as a consequence, it's something that we have to think about as we go to the moon, Mars, and beyond, that we need an insurance policy. And that could be the exploration of outer space. So there's a selfish reason for wanting to go into outer space, not just for the beauty of it or the existential wonder of exploring the universe, but just self-preservation, because we may have to explore outer space. We have no choice, really.
How's quantum going to change our space exploration, speaking of that? Because it's so interesting that we were on this race to the moon in the 60s. We get there, and then maybe after another 20 years after that, it started to be like space was this thing people talked about less and less. And yet that's our galaxy right there. That's how we're supposed to move forward as a civilization. So what types of things are we going to be able to do with quantum that maybe helps us with our rocket propulsion or things like that?
Well, in the short term, we're going to have chemical rockets. But in the longer term, we may have fusion rockets. And we may have rockets that are driven throughout the galaxy using fusion power. And the key to fusion may be quantum computers. Why don't we have fusion power now? We have the equations. We have the basic idea by compressing hydrogen to tens of millions of degrees. It's because of the instability of the gas. The gas is shaped like a donut. If I have a donut and I squeeze a donut, then things barrel out in that direction or they shoot out in that direction. It's very difficult to squeeze a donut, but you have to do that for a fusion plant because gravity compresses evenly. That's why stars are circular. But magnetism has a north pole and a south pole, which means you have to have a donut rather than a sphere. And that's what makes fusion so easy in outer space, but so difficult here on the planet Earth. But that's where quantum computers comes in, because quantum computers can then calculate the instability of the vacuum and allow you to compensate for it. Today, if it's unstable, what do? We have to change the magnetic field. But, we're talking about changing tons and tons of steel and copper. It's much better to do that in the memory of a computer. With the push of a button, you can then alter the dynamics of the magnetic field. And so that's why we think that fusion will be accelerated with the coming of quantum computers that can compute the instability of the hydrogen gas.
So what could that leave our universe then at a certain speed, and then once it gets into space, travel at an entirely different speed? Like a ridiculous speed if we did that, if we worked with a method like that?
Well, let's talk about different propulsion systems, okay? First of all, we have chemical rockets, which cannot reach the stars. It'll take 70,000 years for a Saturn rocket to go from the Earth to the nearest star, Alpha Centauri. 70,000 years for the Saturn rocket to make that journey. The next step beyond that would be fusion plants, fusion reactors, and antimatter reactors. And antimatter is very rare, very expensive substance. One day we'll mass produce it, in which case we can have antimatter rockets. But there's also a third possibility, and that is ramjet fusion power. Now, how do rockets differ from jets? Rockets have their own oxidizer. Everything is self-contained inside a capsule. Jets have a scoop where they scoop up oxygen from the air. That's why jets are different from rockets, okay? Now, in outer space, there's hydrogen gas. Lots of hydrogen gas in outer space. So if you have a scooper that can scoop up hydrogen gas and then burn it, you could run your rocket ship forever. These are called ramjet fusion engines. And some people think that that's the way to explore the galaxy now, not just the nearby stars, but the galaxy using ordinary hydrogen gas that's naturally found in outer space, burning it in the fusion reactor and using that as a basic ingredient. Now, there's some technical problems with it, but that's one option.
What are the
Ramjet
technical
fusion
problems?
powers.
What are the technical problems?
The distribution of hydrogen gas. Hydrogen gas is not uniformly distributed throughout the galaxy. And you want to be in a place where there's lots of free hydrogen gas because there's fuel for free. But you want to make sure there's enough of it to drive your engines.
And quantum could help with simulating where that exists.
Again, because quantum would be able to simulate the gas so that when you squeeze it to create fusion power, it's squeezed correctly rather than create instabilities, which would cause the whole thing to shut down.
God, there's such I don't even know how you fit in a book all the possibilities with this. You don't, I assume.
Well, in my previous book, The Future of Humanity, I list the various options for interstellar travel. And again, this is not for any time soon, but one day we will go to the stars, and we have to look at antimatter rockets, ramjet fusion engines, fusion power, the different kinds of options for going to the nearby stars. But beyond that would require hyperdrive. Beyond that would require wormholes.
And that gets back into the whole time thing. But if we're coming back around on the original point with this, with the immortality and how we're facing that as a potential rewinding of the clock here with quantum, another thing that comes up is the concept of death itself, right? So the way we see it, we have an average lifespan as human beings right now. We die, and then if you believe in the highest power, you go somewhere. If not, it could be over, whatever. Is there already an understanding, though, that like if we die right now, we don't really die and we may exist in another place, and it's not necessarily heaven, it's some sort of parallel universe? And could quantum in some way simulate a way to figure this out?
Well, academically speaking, people that have died in our universe could still be alive in another universe. So just because you died in this universe doesn't mean that you are dead in all universes. In these other universes, you could still be quite alive, okay? And this gets back to what is called the Schrodinger cat problem, where the cat can either be dead and alive simultaneously.
Is that when you put it in the box or whatever?
Yeah. You take a cat, put it in a box, attach the cat to a gun, and the gun is attached to uranium. If uranium fires, it shoots the gun kills the cat is dead. But if the atom never decayed, then the gun never fired, then the cat is still alive. So how do we physicists describe the cat? We add the wave function of the cat plus the wave function of a dead cat, and we add them together. In other words, you are neither dead nor alive. You are both. Okay? Now, some people have a hard time getting their head around it.
Yeah.
But like I said before, get used to it. This is just the way the universe is. Okay? And so in that situation, you could be dead in one universe and alive in another. And then people ask me the final question, is Elvis Presley still alive in a parallel universe? And the answer is, technically, yes.
Is he the same Elvis Presley?
Well, he would be slightly different because he would have a different life history, depending upon when the universe is split. But for the most part, he would be Elvis.
So do you think when we die, I'm putting words in your mouth right now, but do you think there is a probability when we die that we don't know it and we go on existing in some other universe where we are something different? Maybe in this universe, Elvis is a lawyer?
Well, that's quantum mechanics. That is that all possibilities are possible once you entertain the concept of multiple universes. Now, again, you can't meet him. You cannot shake Elvis Presley's hand because he's decohered from you. He vibrates at a different frequency than you, just like radio stations. Two radio stations don't collide. They vibrate at different frequencies, but they occupy the same space. So in other words, Elvis Presley would occupy the same space as you. He'd be in the same room as you, but you can't talk to him because you vibrate at a different frequency than his frequency.
But whether this is true or not, we're continuing to fight death in our mortal life in this universe. So
that's right. And like I said, we are looking at the possibility of extending the lifespan because we are beginning to understand the aging process. Okay. We didn't understand what aging was before. Okay. But now we're beginning to understand the whole process of aging, the buildup of mistakes. But the mistakes are all at the molecular level. And that's where the quantum computer comes in. The quantum computer lives in the molecular realm. That's what it does. It manipulates atoms. It manipulates molecules. And these molecules contain within it the secret of life or the secret of death.
But also along the way, in addition to the mistakes that happen that cause what we see as physical aging, getting older, having wrinkles, and then eventually being old enough, and then if you're healthy the whole way, you die of old age. In the process, though, we see people die of disease. We see all types of afflictions that affect people, viruses, whatever. So when you're looking at, let's do some of the main ones here, like cancer or ALS or anything along those lines, let's stay very high level. Can't quantum effectively find the cure for this stuff? Can't it simulate how bad cells interact with good cells at the molecular level and then fix it?
Let's take a look at Alzheimer's disease. Okay, Alzheimer's disease is caused by amyloid proteins, which comes up the brain. But there's a paradox here. And the paradox is that some people have clear brains, But on autopsy, the brain is cluttered with amyloid proteins that should have gummed up the brain, but there they are acting normal. So in other words, it's not a one-to-one relationship between amyloid protein and Alzheimer's disease. Now, this was just a few years ago, we found out there are at least two varieties of amyloid protein. One spins clockwise in terms of its structure. The other spins counterclockwise. One of them apparently is associated with a debilitating disease, and the other is not. So in other words, if we can then screen out the bad amyloid protein, leave the good one there, you can in principle cure Alzheimer's disease. But how you distinguish between a thing that spins to the left and a thing that spins to the right, that's a molecular decision. We can then create quantum computers that can then manipulate these things so that we can weed out the wrong spin and leave the correct one there. So this is giving us a new way of looking at Alzheimer's disease, that it's molecular, that the reason why Alzheimer's disease gums up the brain is due to the structure of the molecule itself. And that's what quantum computers do. They zero in on the structure of the molecule. While modern medicine is simply trial and error. Trial and error. Penicillin, oh, let's try that. Antibiotics, oh, let's try that. No understanding of the molecular structure. We simply throw things on the wall, hope that one of them sticks, okay? Quantum computers work at the molecular level. And we're now beginning to realize that Alzheimer's disease could be a consequence of a misshapen protein. And the misshapen protein can be detected using quantum computers. That gives us an entirely new handle on Alzheimer's disease.
But if quantum computers is able to detect it and simulate why that happens, we still have to be able to correct it. And if it's occurring at such a microscopic level, we may, when we first figure out what the cause is, not necessarily be able to solve it right away because we don't have the technology as a human
this is
to do that.
hypothetical, but because when a molecule bends one way, the other molecule bends the other way, it's possible to separate them so that you have only one molecule that spins one way. Take a look at sugar and many organic chemicals. You realize that they spin only in one direction? At the beginning of time, when humans came out of the ponds of the original ocean, one molecule was spinning one way, and we are descendants of that one molecule. Our molecules spin one way, but there's another way to spin sugar. You can actually make a counter sugar, a sugar that is bent, that twists the wrong direction, okay? And you cannot incorporate it into your body. Some people think that's the way to cure obesity. Give people the sugar that tastes like sugar, but it's not incorporated into the body's chemistry. It just spins the wrong way.
That could work. I'd be down for that trick. Yeah. If suddenly like broccoli tasted like cake, I'd be fit as hell. That's crazy.
So in other words, the point I'm raising is that all science and all nutrition and biology, medicine is all done at the molecular level. We access it with trial and error. That's how we got penicillin, right? Trial and error. That's how we get antibiotics today, trial and error. With quantum computers, it could be by design. It could say, we want to shape this molecule this way rather than this way because this molecule will work and this molecule will not work. We can now do science at the molecular level, chemistry at the molecular level. Now, will this make chemists unemployed? Well, as one scientist said, the people who are going to be unemployed are the chemists who do not use quantum computers. The chemists who will be employed will be those that do use quantum computers in their work.
And that ties into the theme you talked about with eventually maybe 200 years from now merging with the machines. It's not the same thing, but like it's kind of like an evolutionary process towards that where we start to rely on it. And that makes all the sense in the world because, I mean, you don't go into a doctor's office today and not see them using computers. Not using their iPhone, you know what I mean? Like, we always do that.
And we've been tinkering with our bodies ever since we came out of the forest. Tattoos, perfumes. We've been tinkering with who we are ever since we were in the forest to give ourselves, of course, evolutionary advantage by being more handsome, stronger, whatever. But we've been tinkering with our body for thousands of years.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.